Hello everyone, it's Kavita from Red Door Yoga. Thank you for joining me online for the Red Door Yoga Mini Sutra series. Today I wanted to talk to you about the ego in social isolation. So right now the world as a generality is being socially isolated and that's happening because of COVID-19. We are in the midst of a pandemic and I know this is no surprise to any of you, but as a result of this, we as individuals are all going through a fair amount of stress. Okay, some of us are like, yeah, this isn't so bad, and some of us are, wow, this is actually really hard on me. But even those who are like, yeah, this is not so bad, they are likely to notice here and there that there are certain. I'm going to utilize the term certain cracks in their stress levels. Okay, in their ability to stay balanced, stay centered, and stay in a place of equanimity. Now, the reason for this is because our ego is actually taking quite a hit in social isolation. You see, the ego is an interesting thing. The word for ego in yoga is ahamkara, and ahamkara means the noise of I. And it's effectively this little voice that's always referencing a sense that there's a you and there's a them. There's a separated self. So you are an individual in relation to the world. And it's going on all the time. As I am speaking to you, there's a little voice in the back of my head telling me that I exist and I am doing a particular task for you. So there's that separation. There's an I and there's a you. And science has actually shown us, yoga has said this for thousands of years, but Western science has come to the point now where it agrees wholeheartedly. There is actually no separation between myself and anything else that's existing in the world, right? That here I am, and I'm sitting in what appears to be a room. I'm sitting on the floor, being a yogi, yeah, that's why I tend to sit. I'm sitting on the floor, and my mind tells me that there's an I that's sitting on a floor, that there's a separation, and there is not. Science has come to show that the energy that is me is literally melded into the same energy that is the floor. There is no difference between the two, and there is no separation between the two. There's no barrier, even though my mind is so totally convinced that there is. Okay, so that is the ego. And the ego is an interesting thing because while it is insistent that there's an I and that I am separate from everything else, it also simultaneously requires the rest of the world to reassure it that it exists, to reaffirm its existence and to reaffirm that it has importance. And that's the big hit that a lot of us are taking while we are in social isolation. Because we are not interacting as much with others, we are having this issue where we're not getting the constant feedback that we are existent and that we are consequential. It must have been maybe about 2 years or so ago, I had an interesting conversation with a student of mine, and this student of mine grew up in Japan. And I remember her saying to me, we started, for some reason, we started to talk about the idea of bullying. And she said, in North America, when someone bullies you, they say things to you. They call you names and, they poke at you and what have you. She said in Japan, when people bully you, they ignore you. And she said it's worse. She said you don't exist. They don't speak to you. They don't look at you. They don't acknowledge your existence. And she said it is way worse. And that's to a certain extent what we are going through right now. The reason she said it's way worse is because at least if someone is poking at you and calling you names and telling you awful things about yourself, at least the ego goes, I exist. There is an I. And I'm not trying to suggest to you guys to go out there and bully others or to accept bullying, okay? But what I'm saying is if we are looking at the two experiences, we come to recognize why the student was saying what she was saying, that the sense that I don't exist, the sense that I have no feedback for my very existence and my importance in the world because no one acknowledges me, no one interacts with me, that is harder, much harder on our egos. And so as we're going along, we're all taking these egoic hits right now. Now, with that in mind, um, I would suggest that you do the hard work of getting comfortable with that discomfort. I would suggest you do that, absolutely. But I also don't suggest that you do it to the extent that it's a violent act to yourself, to completely deny yourself, cut yourself off completely from having the reassurance to the ego. Yes, you want the ego to get a little uncomfortable. You want it to recognize that it doesn't run the show, and you do want it to recognize that you are okay, even if you don't have the acknowledgement of your importance in the world. But if this is very difficult for you, if this is causing you real distress and is coming out in ways in which you are being aggressive to yourself and to others, in which you are unable to mentally hold yourself out of anxiety or depression, things like that, those are signs and symptoms that you could do with a little bit of that egoic input. And there are ways to do it. Social media is actually a great way to do it, where you can engage with others over social media when people like your post or they interact with your post or they comment or whatever it is. It's that little knock knock that says, I exist. Okay, I exist and I am consequential. I happen to love Scrabble, and my husband does not. Okay, and so a few years back, he actually got me a Scrabble app. For my iPod. I don't actually have a cell phone, so I have an iPod. So he got me a Scrabble app for my iPod, and through the Scrabble app, I'm able to play games either with just the computer, or I can play games with random opponents. They are referred to as random opponents. Random opponents where wherever they are in the world, if they have the Scrabble app, I start a game and I get to play and then they get to play. Or they've started a game and then when I ask to play a game, they put me into that game and that's my opponent. And we play against one another on the Scrabble game. And that's actually a really great source of that egoic hit. And the egoic hit I'm talking about is going, I exist. I play a move, and at some point in time, the other opponent, wherever they are in the world, they acknowledge my existence by playing a move as well. And it seems silly, okay? But I'm pointing out that this is fundamentally important to our ego to know that it exists, that it has some type of effect on the world around it. And if you are really struggling in this social isolation, little things like that are incredibly helpful, okay? So don't feed your ego too much, but don't starve it to death. It has an important role to play in this world with you. And if it is in real distress right now, be kind to yourself, be kind to your ego, and give it little tiny hits where it just knows that it's consequential and it exists. Okay? I hope this was helpful, everyone. And, I wish all of you health and well-being and happiness in the midst of the social isolation. I do miss being in the studio with my students. I have continued to stay connected to them through my recorded classes and whatnot. And I very much look forward to hearing from all of you as we go along through this period. We'll get through it together. Namaste.